This is a newspaper, right? It's 90% bullshit, but it's entertaining. That's why I read it.
Welcome to the Rob Lett Show. I'm your host, Rob Lett. We call these segments Soapbox News. They're current events I felt compelled to get on my soapbox about, but it's also your chance to get on your soapbox in our comments section. Why nobody trusts the media anymore. That's the focus of today's Soapbox News. We've got a lot to unpack here today. In this episode, we're going to discuss the matrix, what journalism used to be, what it is today, and why Democrats hate the internet. But before we get started, I'd like you to go ahead and do a few things. First of all, like this video, subscribe to it. If you're on YouTube, to the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a bell. That's a notifications bell. Click it, and it'll notify you the next time we release a new show. If you're on Rumble, though, to the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a share button. Click it, and it'll share this video with a friend of yours who should have been here with us today. Go ahead and do all of those things that apply right now. Whew. We're only 127 subscribers away from having 1,000 subscribers. You guys are awesome. You'll be surprised at the number of people that I meet in my travels when I'm on the plane, yes, even in California, who are excited about spreading conservatism and expanding the Republican Party. I get people asking me about the name of my channel all the time. They'll pull their phone out right then and there and they'll subscribe. If you're in a conservative group or just traveling conservative circles, get all of your friends to subscribe. How fast can we hit 1,000 subscribers? I've got another video coming out in perhaps a week. Can you invite 127 subscribers by the next time we see each other? Tell me how many people you referred in the comments section. Maybe I'll give the winner a shout out in the next video.
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?
Hopefully you've seen this movie called The Matrix. If you have, you probably know what I'm going to say before I even start. If you haven't, then an explanation is in order. At the time, The Matrix was a really groundbreaking movie, had the most cutting-edge special effects, and a very, very original storyline. Without getting too deep into the movie, the premise of the movie was that the world we live in right now isn't the real world, but a simulation. When I was trying to figure out how to start today's show, The Matrix was the first thing to come to mind. Because the things we've seen make us feel like we're in a dream. If I told you one day that a strange man would walk directly into a woman's restroom and nobody would throw him out, you'd think I was crazy. If I told you a man would enter the women's swimming competition, a man would be sentenced to the women's prison. If I told you that one day your children would be taught that there are 72 genders and that if you didn't like your gender, if you didn't like your color, if you didn't even like the fact that you are a human being, you could identify as a wolf, you would say, please wake me up from this nonsense. Surely I'm having a nightmare. But you can't wake up from it because you were never dreaming. All of those things and more belong to the platform of the Democrat Party. But a crazy person with crazy ideas can't thrive all by themselves. They have to have help in order to bring these ideas to fruition. And Americans are starting to realize these helpers are collectively known as the media. But it wasn't always this way, of course. I remember hearing that journalists were supposed to be impartial and keep their opinions out of things. I remember hearing that and watching the news and trying to see if I could determine who the news anchor was probably going to vote for. I couldn't tell. I remember when late night talk shows all kept the same format. They invited actors, athletes, comedians, entertainers, and musical guests all to their show. These people mainly came on the show to promote something, an upcoming movie, an upcoming album, a tour in the works. It was a great relationship. They got to promote their projects, we got to be entertained and see some of our favorite celebrities, even if it were just for a few minutes. Everybody laughed and it was fun. And then things started to change. If you let the left tell the story, they'll tell you that we started being divided as a nation when Donald Trump was elected. That's the narrative that the left tries to feed us. But I remember feeling divided way back before Trump ever announced that he wanted to run for president. I distinctly remember feeling divided back when George Bush Jr. was running for president. And it wasn't because of anything that George Bush was doing. Now hear me on this. I'm not saying that the world was all rainbows and bunny rabbits before George Bush was president. I'm not saying that, okay? I'm saying this is when I started noticing it. Yes, I know late night talk show hosts made fun of all of the presidents, but this was different. What I started to notice is how the media started dividing us by our beliefs right before our eyes. More talk shows went from having fun to almost killing the mood by trying to inject politics into the conversation. Fortunately here, Prince didn't take the bait.
Oh man, you see, someday you're going to wake up naked, chained to a streetlight while that happens. Now, what did you tell me? Oh, I had Bill Maher the other night. You told me you enjoy his show too, Politically Incorrect. You like arguing? I see you don't seem like an arguing kind of guy.
I don't like to argue, but I like open discussions.
Yeah.
I like the unedited nature of the show.
Yeah, yeah.
And last night was interesting. They were talking about war and why there shouldn't be any.
Yeah.
You know, so it was interesting.
I mean, you like to speak your mind. What do you want to speak? What do you want to talk about? Is something you want to speak your mind about tonight?
I want to know if you wanted to get your chair.
I don't know how old you are, but raise your hand if you distinctly remember being told that if you want to get along with your friends, family, and coworkers, there are two subjects you should always stay away from: religion and politics. Raise your hand if you remember hearing that. Most of us recall that. But for the first time, I was starting to see a very disturbing pattern emerge on late night television. Nearly all of the guests were asked what they thought of the current president, George Bush. It was almost a concerted effort to put your favorite athletes, actors, singers, and more on the spot and pressure them so that they could tell you what they thought of Republicans. They had taken one of the taboo subjects, politics, and pressured everyone to publicly pick a side. It started to become implied that all the cool people were Democrats. The word Republican was almost used as an insult.
You're doing something with your life. I admire people of action.
Please. I mean, the only reason that you're even paying attention to me is because my hair is combed and I'm wearing heels. This is so like you, superficial, sexist, chauvinist, or Republican.
Almost as bad as media bias are the things the media doesn't report because they just don't want you talking about it. I'm amazed at the number of media outlets who haven't really called Joe Biden out on this so-called Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, can we be honest? I mean, inflation got run up to 9.1% under Joe Biden. Do we really want to approve a $739 billion piece of legislation called the Inflation Reduction Act from the same man who had the highest rate of inflation in 40 years? This is about as dumb as giving an arsonist credit for calling the fire department. Who are the people impressed by this? It can only be people who have no clue what inflation is in the first place. And this is the reason why you have to educate yourself, because the media isn't going to do it for you.
Inflation in the United States is made in Washington and nowhere else. Of course, no government any more than any one of us likes to take responsibility for bad things. We're all of us human. If something bad happens, it wasn't our fault. And the government is the same way. So it doesn't accept responsibility for inflation. If you listen to people in Washington talk, they will tell you that inflation is produced by greedy businessmen, or it's produced by grasping unions, or it's produced by spendthrift consumers, or maybe it's those terrible Arab sheiks who are producing it. Now, of course, businessmen are greedy. Who of us isn't? Trade unions are grasping. Who of us isn't? And there's no doubt that the consumer is a spendthrift. At least every man knows that about his wife. But none of them produce inflation, for the very simple reason that neither the businessman, nor the trade union, nor the housewife has a printing press in their basement on which they can turn out those green pieces of paper we call money. Only Washington has that printing press, and therefore only Washington can produce inflation.
Translation? So the $739 billion legislation that only the Democrats and Joe Biden signed off on won't actually reduce inflation, but instead will increase it. But your journalists are out to lunch on that investigative report. Why is it you don't hear much coverage on how deceptive it was for the Biden administration to call it the Inflation Reduction Act in the first place, when it doesn't even reduce inflation? They knew this was just a sneaky way to capitalize off of the inflation crisis that they themselves had created. So after having caused inflation in the first place, now they're going to pretend to be the ones who are going to solve it. If you Google the climate bill right now, you'll see that the climate bill and the Inflation Reduction Act are one and the same. In fact, nearly nobody talks about reducing inflation anymore. The media's just decided to stay quiet on that until after the midterms. But hey, at least we're getting off fossil fuels with that $739 billion, right? Yeah, this is a scam. Have you ever seen that video of Kristen Zimmerman, the CEO of GM, when they unveiled the Chevy Volt? Pay close attention to the question the reporter asked her.
I'm really grateful to be here today, and in fact, this is a chance for me to say thank you more formally. The Chevy Volt is upstairs. We'll be able to take a look at it. We've got about 1,000 photos.
Yeah. Is it plugged? It's as simple as that. The batteries are in the trunk?
No, the battery in this particular design is a T shape right down the center and across the back seat area. Because everybody thought we killed the electric vehicle. No, we didn't. It's alive and well.
So what's charging the batteries right now? What's the source of
Well, here,
electricity?
it's coming from the building.
I mean, is it what's our mix of power?
Oh, actually, Lansing feeds the building.
What's that?
Lansing feeds power to the building. So I don't know.
They're
I bet you they're a bit of coal. They're heavy on natural gas, aren't they?
right now the car's charging off of your grid.
Right. It would be charging off our grid, which is about 95% coal.
That's crazy, right? So Democrat supporters really got duped twice. They got duped the first time by believing that the Inflation Reduction Act actually reduces inflation. But then they got duped again because the true intention of the bill to get us off fossil fuels isn't going to work either. How do I know this? Because California just got egg on their face when they tried to ban gasoline vehicles by the year 2035. And then, can't make this up, just days after the announcement, California had an emergency in their power grid and they asked all of their citizens to make sure that they don't charge their electric vehicles. So I ask you, where would Californians be right now if they didn't have any gas-powered vehicles at all? Answer, they'd be stuck like Chuck because they've been relying on the American media to feed them propaganda instead of doing investigative journalism on this entire narrative about climate change. Sooner or later, the truth blows up in our faces that we were lied to. But like I said, the media's been doing this for quite a while. Let's go back. The media started in on George Bush his first year in office. He was inaugurated in January of 2001, and in that same year, we were attacked on 9/11. The media had a field day. Michael Moore released a political film saying that 9/11 was an inside job planned by George Bush. The economy went into a tailspin, and suddenly it became extremely fashionable to become a Bush hater. What I found most interesting was how short of a memory we all had. Because on February 26, 1993, when Bill Clinton was president, these exact same buildings were attacked. Do you remember when they found that Ryder truck of explosives in the parking garage of the World Trade Center? Why would you put an entire truck of explosives at the base of a tall building? Isn't that something that you would do if you wanted the entire building to collapse? Yes, it is. Isn't that what happened on 9/11? Yes, it is. 6 people died. 1,000 people were injured. Over 50,000 had to be evacuated. But nobody remembers the event happening under Bill Clinton. Only under George Bush. 9/11 wasn't the first attack on American soil. That's a lie. The terrorists just didn't finish the job they set out to do the first time. From that point on, I noticed an uptick in the number of people who wanted to talk about politics publicly, when it used to be something you just kept to yourself. If you were a Republican back then, you were expected to just keep quiet while everyone else talked about how bad Republicans were.
It don't matter who wins this election right now. Don't matter. Barack or McCain. It don't matter right now because Bush is still in charge. George Bush is still in charge. And nobody gives less of a than George Bush. You think you don't give a Bush don't give a.
By the time Barack Obama was elected, the coverage from the media was as if the heavens had opened up and we had all come together to love one another. The media always does this when a Democrat wins. When a Republican wins, George Bush, Donald Trump, they say the nation is divided. But when a Democrat wins, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, they say now it is a time for all Americans to come together as one. To this day, I hear Democrats referring to Barack Obama as having had a scandal-free presidency. Scandal-free? I guess that whole thing about the IRS targeting conservatives doesn't count as fascism, huh? I guess forcing Obamacare down people's throats when it was later found out to be unconstitutional doesn't count either, huh?
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
These are just some of the things that were brushed under the rug during Obama's term because he was a Democrat. Now, I know just as soon as I say that, some Democrat watching this is going to say that's absolutely not true and that the media doesn't protect Democrats. Really? We just watched the Democrats try to impeach Trump twice on nearly everything imaginable. These are 2 articles from 2017, back when Democrats were trying to impeach Trump using the 25th Amendment as an excuse to say that Donald Trump was mentally unfit to be president. In other words, they were saying that Trump was too crazy to be president. I want you to keep all this mental fitness stuff in mind while I show you this. Joe Biden Biden has fallen twice since he's been president. He hasn't even been president for 2 years yet. Right now, he's averaging better than a fall a year, but he's still got 4 months to go to fall again. Listen, I'm a public speaker. I get it. If you talk long enough, eventually you're going to say something that you wish you had never said. It happens. But that's not what I'm talking about with Joe Biden. I'm talking about the times when nobody even knew what the heck he was talking about and the media still tried to cover for him.
That's underway, just like the other question that's illogical. And I've heard you speak about it because you always, I'm not being solicitous, but you're always straight up about what you're doing. And the question is whether or not we should be in a position where you are, why can't the experts say, we know that this virus is in fact, it's going to be, or excuse me, we know why all the drugs approved are not temporarily approved, but permanently approved. Yeah. That's underway too. I expect that to occur quickly.
Well, that means you mean for the FDA.
This doesn't even count the number of times he slurred his words and we didn't even know what he was saying.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
But worst of all are the times when Joe Biden are doing things for no reason at all. Like the time he's trying to clap, and that's not even a real clap.
Sweden to join our alliance.
What the hell?
Finland and Sweden to join our alliance.
Or when he's shaking hands with invisible people. Or the times when you can tell he doesn't seem to know what to do. I don't recall a time that a president needed to have his wife go with him nearly everywhere that he goes. Do you?
Happy Easter. All right.
Wait.
I mean, seriously, I'm talking about Democrat or Republican. You'd see the First Lady once in a while, but not almost every time the president speaks. And in all of these incidents, how many times has the mainstream media campaigned on the fact that Joe Biden needs to be impeached because he's crazy? None. Even when he made the most ridiculous claim in presidential history.
Vice President Biden said something yesterday in Iowa that really caught our ear about the fight against cancer. Let me play this for everyone.
I promise you, if I'm elected president, you're going to see the single most important thing that changes in America is we're going to cure cancer.
Now, Congressman, I know how personal this is to Joe Biden. We know how much energy and time that he has put into fighting cancer with the Biden Cancer Initiative. But with that phrase, we're going to cure cancer, how can he promise that, though?
We're America. When we made the commitment to go to the moon, people didn't think we could do it.
They all just turn their heads like this is a legitimate campaign promise. This is cancer. You're playing with people's lives and emotions. Do you see my point? And the sad part about this is he really is unfit to be president of the United States. And I don't say that from a partisan perspective. I say that from a common sense perspective. You don't have to be a psychiatrist to observe this. Listen, if a Republican was walking around shaking hands with invisible people, I don't care what my affiliation is, I would say, yeah, we probably need to get somebody else to run. This just isn't right. But the media wants to pretend he's in the best of health, and we're just stupid. Now, back when Trump got elected, the gloves were off. The media could barely contain themselves. They would absolutely lie to convict that man of something, of anything. Never mind the fact that the Russian dossier that was used to convict Trump of Russian collusion was paid for by Hillary Clinton. Never mind that Donna Brazile wrote a book saying that the DNC was corrupted by who? Hillary Clinton. Never mind that to this day there is still a video of Joe Biden admitting to a quid pro quo, and it's on tape.
They said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
The media was still going to try to impeach Trump for the crimes of Democrats, even if the media had evidence to the contrary. It would take more than the time that I have to discuss all the phony charges they brought against Trump in just one term. I have a friend of mine who's a Democrat and has literally lost every debate we've ever had. Now, I don't exaggerate or say that to make myself look good. I'm really saying this more as a testament to the fact that the reason he keeps losing these debates because he treats everything that he hears on the media as though it is gospel. He's put zero research into ever finding out if any of the claims he's heard are true. I keep telling everybody that politics is not a drive-by sport. It's not one of those things that you can just look at the news really quick and think you got all the details. Smears are so common, I just learned from Nancy Pelosi that there's an actual name for these type of smears.
We call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear.
I'm only mentioning this to show you how the media has colored our perception of what good and evil are. The media throw rocks and then hide their hands and point to a Republican like they had nothing to do with the divisiveness in our country. And it's dangerous for more reasons than one. Let's forget about who you'd vote for a minute, shall we? By politicizing everything that they get their hands on, the media are slowly destroying society because we feel we can no longer trust them with the truth, even when it comes to matters of our health. Obama's chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, once said something I've never forgotten. Hillary Clinton mentions it here.
The chief of staff for President Obama is an old friend of mine and my husband's, and was in the White House when Bill was there, and he said, never waste a good crisis. And when it comes to the economic crisis, don't waste it when it can have a very positive impact on climate change and energy security. And that's what we're trying to do.
Never let a good crisis go to waste. Isn't that something? This is something Democrats have been in denial about, even though it's come out of the mouths of several Democrat elected officials. Let me take you back to before COVID for a second. This is what Democrats were worried about back then.
The economy is going pretty well. We have to, what? Why is that funny?
It is going well for now.
For now, right. That's my, thank you. That's my question. I feel like the bottom has to fall out at some point. And by the way, I'm hoping for it because I think one way you get rid of Trump is a crashing economy. So please bring on the recession.
Combine his comments with COVID coming on the scene and a presidential election right around the corner. Democrats in the media did everything they could to shut down everything the year that Trump was running for re-election. They shut down businesses, they shut down schools. There was even talk of defunding the police department. But magically this year in 2022, Biden took the mask off for the State of the Union address. We're all good now, just in time for the midterms. Open those businesses, take those masks off. It was this constant contradiction of messages that was starting to tick the public off a little bit. It's one thing for the media to be for or against a candidate, but it's another thing to be playing with our health. And the sad part is it's not over. You think now that the media has the president they wanted, the mind games would be over. But they're not. Here are two articles I found on monkeypox. The articles were written just 3 days apart from each other. Now, NBC reads, Sex between men, not skin contact, is fueling monkeypox, new research suggests. The claim that skin-to-skin contact during sex between men, not intercourse itself, drives monkeypox transmission is likely backward, a growing group of experts say. But The Hill reports monkeypox may be on its way to a school near you. If you're a parent, you gotta be wondering, according to NBC, if monkeypox is spread from men having sex with each other, why are you trying to scare me to death about my child? And why have the media taken so long to say the real reason monkeypox was spreading? The answer? Political correctness. They're playing with our health again, and this affects both Republicans and Democrats. If you weren't aware, YouTube changed some of their policies regarding what you can and can't say about COVID. At one point, YouTube would shut you down for saying some of these things. Now you can say the things that's highlighted in blue. Translation: there was nothing wrong with you saying it in the first place. It was the truth all along, and nevertheless you suffered because of the media's willingness to ban your free speech. You may have suffered because your channel was shut down and that was your only source of income. You may have suffered because you lost your job and they claimed that it was mandatory. You may have lost relationships with family and friends because they tried to bully you into something that they ended up being wrong about in the first place. The mainstream media may think it's all fun and games to play politics in order to elect their favorite candidate, but in the end, it's actually dangerous to society because what they're doing is they're creating a boy who cried wolf environment. I'm not hoping for it, but sooner or later there will be a national emergency requiring all of our attention, and the media will be absolutely baffled by the number of Americans who have ignored their calls, and it will cost people their lives. It's absolutely embarrassing how the media participates in every way to promote things they know are blatant lies.
The various shots that people are getting now cover that. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Yeah.
So not only is the president lying, who is vaccinated and caught COVID twice, but he is flanked by CNN anchor Don Lemon, who just stands there after having heard that blatant lie and says, yeah.
This is a newspaper, right? It's 90% bullshit, but it's entertaining. That's why I read it.
If you're familiar with socialist and communist countries, you're probably familiar with the fact that dictators don't want you consuming any data other than what they've told you to be true. As much as I've heard Democrats try to call Trump a dictator, I'm sorry, but it's Joe Biden who set up a ministry of truth, not Trump. Disinformation Governance Board. The Disinformation Governance Board, DGB, was an advisory board of the United States Department of Homeland Security announced on April 27, 2022. The board's stated function is to protect national security by disseminating guidance to DHS agencies on combating misinformation, malinformation, and disinformation that threatens the security of the homeland. It's funny how DGB sounds a lot like KGB. Anyway, it was Joe Biden's idea to come up with a Department of Homeland Security that had the ability to enforce the law against people who disagreed with the Biden administration. Don't fool yourself. That's what its purpose was. Biden only scrapped the idea because Republicans were handing him his butt on the topic and midterms were right around the corner. This wasn't the first time Democrats tried to crush what's on the internet. Mark Zuckerberg revealed this on Joe Rogan's podcast recently. If you haven't seen the interview, it's pretty darn explosive if you think about what it means.
How do you guys handle things when they're a big news item that's controversial? Like there was a lot of attention on Twitter during the election because of the Hunter Biden laptop story. The New York Post.
Had that too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
So we took a different path than Twitter. Basically the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team. It was like, hey, just so you know, like you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. So our protocol is different from Twitter's. What Twitter did is they said you can't share this at all. We didn't do that. What we do is we have, if something is reported to us as potentially misinformation, important misinformation, we also have this third-party fact-checking program because we don't want to be deciding what's true and false. And for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false, the distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it, you could still consume it.
So when you say the distribution is decreased,
it got shared.
How does that work?
Basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely...
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's it's meaningful.
So let's get this straight. Remember the FBI that tried to stop Trump from being president the first time? You remember that story, right? So here we have the exact same FBI showing up to Facebook headquarters and telling the CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, that he should silence certain stories because they're phony. Now, which stories are phony? The ones that make Joe Biden look bad before the 2020 elections, of course. So here we go again. The media caught in a lie about what's really going on behind the scenes. We all knew it, but I can't say specifically what I'm thinking, or YouTube will probably remove this video. So you'll have to read between the lines. And this is why Democrats really hate the internet. Let's just say CNN comes up with a story about something that's going on in Georgia. Many of you know that I live in Georgia, so you'd probably call me or text me to get my take on what happened. Democrats hate that. They hate you checking behind them. You should just take their word for it. They wish that you couldn't talk to me and vice versa. They wish that they could be the only definitive voice so that they could do things like, I don't know, redefine what a recession is. But they can't shut you up without making it obvious that they're being a dictator. So they settle for something in between, which is to intimidate private companies to do their bidding. The new FBI is starting to look like this. This is what they did to Mark Zuckerberg. This is what Mark implied also happened to Twitter. How they don't see this as government intimidation is beyond me. This, ladies and gentlemen, is fascism. I know you keep wanting to hang this term on Trump, but I'm sorry. So far, the only party that's benefiting from all of this are Democrats. Biden is the president they were trying to protect when they showed up to Facebook, remember? And before that, the FBI was trying to protect Clinton. Well, we'll never get it all, but we did unpack a lot. In this episode, we discussed The Matrix. In this episode, we discussed why our world seems like something out of a movie right now. The media have let things that are obviously crazy go without question. They've lost all journalistic integrity. First of all, nothing like this would have ever happened in the old days, but let's just say for argument's sake, if you had arrested a man and put him in a woman's prison in the old days, you could count on somewhere some journalist to do their homework, to do some investigative reporting to see how many women have been assaulted as a result of doing something like this. In the old days, they probably would have made it a 3-part series, some kind of expose that you could watch every week into the practice. They probably would have given them some sort of journalistic award. But today, because it's a Democratic talking point, the media act like mindless Matrix agents. They act like this is normal, so we get to see increasingly ridiculous acts that make us feel like we're in a dream world. We even see children being groomed while the media stands with their hands tied behind their backs. What journalism used to be. We briefly discussed the good old days when we used to stay off topics like religion and politics. You can call it naive if you wanted to, but it kept us together as a family. It also kept us together as friends, the days when we used to keep private things private. What it is today. We said today we've allowed the media to bully society into publicly stating who we support politically. So much so that we've lost our friends. We've lost our family. Some of us have lost our jobs. The lines between right and wrong are blurred, so nobody trusts the media anymore on matters other than sports and the weather. And even the weather is iffy because then you'd have to sit through a pitch about climate change. As a result, many parents have pulled their children out of public schools. Homeschooling is at an all-time high. Ron DeSantis just overturned a school board in Florida because parents are sick and tired of indoctrination disguising itself as education. Why Democrats hate the internet. Finally, we talked about the dangers the media have put us in, as well as the dangers to come. The lies about COVID are pure examples of the dangers the media have put us in. The dangers to come are the hints we've seen from the Biden administration. They didn't say the Ministry of Information was done. They said it was paused. They had to have had meetings about it before they implemented it. They had to have sat down and thought it was a good idea to pursue and arrest companies and people who disagreed with them politically. So look for that plan to come back sooner or later. It'll probably be hidden in a bill like they did with the 87,000 IRS agents. Remember back when Biden was going to tax you even if you had just as little as $600 in your bank account? You thought that was going away. He just hired 87,000 new IRS agents. Do the math. There aren't 87,000 billionaires. So who are the extra agents for? And that's where I'll leave it for now. If you're new around here, our channel is both a combination of podcasts, long-form understanding of conservative principles, and soapbox news, videos where you get to get on your soapbox about the latest news of the day. Be sure you like, subscribe, and share with someone who should have been here with us today. See you next time.